Good afternoon, everybody. Gator with E-Cells e-bikes, and today's video is going to be how to change the tube in your tire. And we're actually going to do the rear tire today because there's a couple tricks with the rear tire, and this way we can show you. But the removal of the tube and installation of a tube is the exact same front tire, rear tire. It doesn't make a difference. To start with, we know not everybody has a bike stand and rack that can spin the bike like I do. So for this, it would be easiest to put the bike upside down. We've removed the front and the rear battery. And you, as always, if you're turning the bike over, make sure you turn this display forward so that you don't hurt it when you set it down. Once again, as I always stress doing this, great time to use some of that packing foam you saved and protect the bike when you do have to turn it upside down to work on it. The tools we're going to need for this project today are going to be a pair of snips, a crescent wrench, a set of tire spoons, a valve puller for the Schrader valve, an 18 combination wrench, our E-Cells micro air pump, and some soapy water. If you're out in the field, I realize you're probably not carrying around a bottle of soapy water, but even plain bottled water put onto the rim right before you air it up or right before you start using those tools on the rim will prevent any damage. I know, you gotta love this stand, makes life so easy. To start with, we are going to remove the cable holding the rear motor on so we can unplug the rear motor, take off our caps, protecting our nuts. If your derailleur tensioner is in the on position, such as this, it's not going to let you bring your derailleur armature up to release the tire. You need to turn this off so that your derailleur will spring into release position to allow you to remove the rear tire. The only time this needs to be turned off is to remove and reinstall the rear tire. Now we can remove or loosen the axle bolts. There is no need to totally remove the bolt. You just have to have it backed out enough so that the lock washer will clear and release. If you have a model bike that has anti-torque washers, right here, the only thing that changes is the removal of the washer. For the cassette side, the washer just slides off. If it's stuck on a little bit, just use a flathead to pry in between to break it free. If you're doing the brake side removal, you will need a 2.5 Allen, and you just unscrew the one nut holding it on, and once again, if it sticks, just put a flathead in between and turn. That'll break it free. And that's how to remove and reinstall the anti-torque washer. Sometimes, because of the amount of torque that our motors put out, this rear motor does not, or this rear wheel does not want to release. You can beat on it with a hammer and it still won't come free. If you ever run into that issue, here's the trick and the simplest solution in the world. I grab both sides of the flat part of the axle with a crescent wrench, tighten it, and now I can manually manipulate this axle and release the pressure and the tension and now the tire and axle will freely come out. But I am going to put these nuts in the washer back on, because anybody that's ever changed a tire on their car on the side of the road, it's not good if you lose one of these and now you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and you can't ride home. Put them back on. Now you know you won't lose them. When I remove a rear wheel, I like to be in 10th gear, the smallest cog, because that gives me one more room to manipulate the axle out. We're now gonna remove the tire or the tube from the rim and the tire itself, but I do want you to know I have a hole drilled in the corner of my bench so that the axle goes right in the hole. And when I put this down, I am going to be putting the rotor side down, because as I apply pressure, I know the rotor is going to be staying on something flat and it won't damage the rotor. If you have to do this repair roadside, my advice would be maybe try sitting down so that the rim can go over your legs and you can keep this stuff lifted up and protected. This particular tire here does not have a flat, but we're changing this tube anyways. And the first thing I'm going to need to do is make sure all the air is out. Just because your tire's flat doesn't mean the tube's deflated. So with a valve stem puller, I remove the valve stem so that I know all the air can come out of the tire and the tube, and then I won't be fighting with that later. I'm gently lifting up from the bottom to make sure that the bead's broken from the bottom. And the top, we just push it down and break the bead from the top. This is a spray bottle of nothing but soapy water. What this does is it lets the tools slide easily on the rubber in the rim, and it helps prevent any damaging. Now we're going to use our tire spoons to remove the tire from the rim, and after the tire, we'll be able to remove the tube once we get the front one side of the tire popped off. This is definitely easier with 2 spoons. And another trick is pinch the opposite end that you're working on. It helps relieve pressure. I'm leaving 1 spoon in place so that it doesn't break free. And these have a very handy notch right here that hooks onto the spokes. Well, that time it popped off, but we see what they do. I take my other tire spoon, start from the back end, and slide towards where you've already popped it free. And as you feel it bite, then you know to use the spoon as a fulcrum or a lever and pop the tire off the rim. As it starts coming off, you get more play, and as you get more play, now we're able to take our tool and just spin all the way around the tire and the rim, and now this tire is free of the rim on one side. We pop the tire up, push the valve stem out. With the valve stem removed, we just kind of pick up on this end of the tire and just remove the tube. I don't know if the camera is picking this up or not, but as I'm removing the tube, you're still hearing air hiss out of the tube. That's the advantage of removing the Schrader valve from the valve stem, so that air isn't trapped in there creating bubbles and making you fight with it. If this was a patch job, we'd put air into the tube, find where the leak is, and use the tire patch kit to patch the hole that came with the bike. And if it's not a patch and a replace, you're putting in a new tube. Well, a new tube comes totally flat like this, and it can be a little bit more difficult to manipulate into the tire and not get any twists in it. So we've just got a little bit of air in this tube, and it made it take some form and shape so that everything's not stuck together and wants to twist. We'll start with aligning the valve stem with the hole in the rim and insert that first. We have the valve stem inserted in the hole. Now we're just going to go around the tire and start putting the tube in between the tire and the rim from the opposite end, making careful note that there's no twists in it. If you replace your tire and notice that it's real bouncy afterwards, most likely we got a little twist in the tube, it's made a bubble, and that's what's throwing your tire off. Now we're ready to close the tire back up on the rim. Once again, bunch of soapy water. And the other part of soapy water on the reinstallation is this tube airs up, it's going to apply pressure to the tire, and you have a bead here that sits inside the rim. With the soapy water, it allows the rubber to stretch one way or the other, and it will prevent the tire from going on unevenly. I'm just working this back on by hand until I can no longer do it. As I'm pushing on this side's wanting to come undone, so it's time to get back in with our tools to button this up. Take your tire spoon underneath, gently rock back. Go about an inch, rock back. Another inch, rock back, and just keep taking inch, half-inch bites until the tire goes back on. The only thing left we have to do is we're going to put some soapy water on this side to make sure that this side of the rim also mounts evenly and properly. Now with both sides of our rim nice and soapy, it's time to reinflate. For reinflating the tire, I'm going to use our E-Cells micro air pump. I have it set at 19.5 pounds, and it'll shut off at 19.5 pounds. What's nice about this is I've already done all this other work and I need a breather. So when I hit this button, I'm going to be able to take a little break while the tire airs up. And when I hear this pump shut off, I know the tire's aired up to proper PSI, and I can put it back on the bike and continue with my ride and go home and enjoy my day. I will now remove the pump, replace the valve stem cap, and now it's time to put this tire back on the bike so we can finish our ride and get home. Very important when you're replacing the tire back on, make sure that your rotor drops in the opening for your brake pads. If not, you're just going to destroy your brake pads, damage your rotor, and you're not going to get the wheel to drop in. So as you place the tire back in, you're making sure that this rotor's lining up in the opening as we replace the wheel assembly. And I also manipulate the derailleur arm into the open position so that I can drop the cassette onto the chain. As long as you line that rotor up with the opening of the brakes, drops in nice and easy. And as I put the tire back on, I'm making sure that the chain is on that last small cog because that was the cog it was on when we took it off. And now when you go to pedal the bike, it's in the proper gear and doesn't put any extra stress or strain on the chain, the cassette, or your derailleur. With the tire in place, we can tighten up the axle bolts. Axle nuts tighten back down. Axle bolt protector caps back on. Now we'll plug this rear motor in, making sure that we line the arrows up. We see the notch right in front of this arrow. If you don't plug this in so that that notch is all the way up, you don't have a solid connection and you will burn up a motor or your controller. We just need to put a zip tie back on. I recommend that you carry a few with you in your accessory bag. Maybe put a couple right in that tire patch kit. With our rear motor wire secured back in proper place, we will turn the derailleur's anti-chain slap back on. Cut this little end off. Now it's time to turn your bike over and get home. We have now successfully removed the rear tire and rear wheel assembly. We've changed the tube, replaced it, and put it back on. We hope this video was helpful for you. Please keep the questions coming so I can keep bringing you some answers. And remember, always wear your helmet. Thank you and have a great day. In today's video, I used a bike rack and stand to do my work. Can't do that out in the field, I understand that. But if you're somebody that likes to fix things yourself, do work yourself, and you're going to do a lot of work to these bikes because of the weight, this Park Tool PRS4 bike stand is the way to go. You saw how easily I was able to manipulate the bike to be able to do any work I needed to.